Steve's a Saguaro guy. Get up here and ask him a question. All right. Since 1995, 3 local football players have been drafted in the NFL. Can you tell them who they are besides you?
Mike Sherlock. Since 1995, are we including 95?
Yeah, 95. You were drafted.
Mike Sherlock, Sean Harris, and Kareem.
Kareem. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Now, where's Sherlock? You guys got drafted by the same team, right?
Yeah, St. Louis Rams 1995 was my roommate in LA. It was the first year of St. Louis. They were in LA and he got moved that year. Just talked to him a couple weeks ago. He's in Charlotte, raising his family of 4 kids. Literally one of the best athletes I've ever seen, hands down, period. From track to football, and also one of the best people you'll ever meet, for sure.
Now, Frank Garcia got a couple years ago a punter, and he played professional football too. And I said, how did you, like for a baseball, you got a good arm, maybe you think it, but I said, when did you start realizing you could punt the ball? You know, I could kick for everybody else. When did you start thinking you could kick like, a place kicker?
Soccer. Pima County, 10 years, playing soccer growing up. St. Francis, though, a lot of battles against AYSO. The Pima Cup was one of the staples of my youth growing up. I mean, that's why this award's so amazing. I mean, it's like the greatest thing. I was born a couple miles down the road, and growing up playing soccer, that's where it all started. And my brother and I used to go to Saguaro and start kicking field goals, and then just kind of learned, hey, you know what? Went to Saguaro, and I want to be a wide receiver because I felt like I could catch anything, which wasn't the case. I could catch, but I was really slow. So they said, hey, who can kick? And I want to do that too. So I started kicking, and at the time it was Tom Pearson, Billy Lopez, Bob Viaden, Howard Briding, mentioned it earlier, all those guys there, and that's where I started it.
So you started your freshman, when did you start kicking though, your freshman year or earlier than that?
Yeah, freshman year was the first time.
First time you kicked?
Yeah, that I kicked. I think I kicked in, back in the day it was TYF, it's Pop Warner now, but it was TYF back in the day. And that's where kind of, I think maybe when I was in 5th grade, I played a year, but I got beat up so bad, and lots of concussions, which is why I tell my wife when I can't find my wallet or something, I'm like, it's concussions, honey, from like way earlier in my life. It doesn't work all the time, but that's where it all started. So, but soccer is still my favorite sport of all time.
So when you go out and you just like a punter, you have to have someone hold the ball for you too. Was that your brother doing that? You just can't go out and kick. You want someone to hold the ball, right?
Yeah, a lot of lonely days. All summer while my friends slept in, I got up every day and I went to Saguaro, and I just kicked. And my brother and I would go up there all the time. And my brother actually was a place kicker at Northern Arizona University. So together we kind of just did that like every summer. But it was never like we had a great work ethic, but it was more about the fun. We were enjoying going up there every day and kicking and stuff. So that was the fun of it.
So, do you have a kicking coach? Did you have any lessons like that? You did it by yourself?
Yeah, we just kind of figured out for the most part on our own. At the time, Jeff Black was a kicking prodigy in Tucson at Saguaro High School before I came in, and he was working with a guy named John Howard, who's a kicking coach. So I started working with those guys, but it was mostly my brother and I and our soccer background more than anything that just kind of went from there.
So you get a scholarship to U of A. Were other schools probably offered scholarship to you too?
Yeah, UCLA was the main competitor. Rick Neuheisel at the time was the quarterback's coach. He came to Saguaro all the time. He was doing recruiting. He was telling me, "Come on, Steve, how many Rose Bowls has Arizona been to? How many Rose Bowls has Arizona been to?" And I'm like, I'd like to try to maybe be part of the first one if I can. So it was close with UCLA, but ultimately, to Mrs. Johnson's point, I grew up watching your son. Max and Dejas, I sold Cokes in the stadium at U of A during those soccer years in my teenage years. So I didn't sell that many Cokes, but I saw every game. It was awesome. And I watched all those guys in the 80s, and my mom can relate as a mother to what you were saying about the praying. My dad always told a story where he said that he has these permanent finger marks in his shoulder, because every time at Arizona when I got up for a field goal, my mom would be like that. So sorry, Pat.
That's right. There's always pressure on a kicker, though.
Yeah,
all the time.
And ultimately, it came down to my friends and family. I mean, I grew up here, played at Saguaro, and UCLA was really never even a consideration. I mean, it was an option, but when Dick Tomey came to my house and offered me a scholarship, that was it. I committed during the end of my senior year in high school.
So when you're kicking at the U of A, I mean, what was your best kick you made there?
The best kick that went between the uprights,
Yeah.
or I had some really good ones that we were just talking back, officials. You know, it's hard to say. You know, my best kick, I don't know. You know, probably, you know, the ones that probably the most special one, I guess, would have to say was against Stanford my junior year. That was sort of a history-making thing for our team. That kick, if we made that field goal, it was the first time Arizona had ever started the season 7-0 in the history, or 8-0, I can't remember the time. And it was a game winner, and Bill Walsh was coaching at Stanford at the time. And Stenstrom dropped back on the 10-yard line and got tackled, and he fumbled the ball, and we had a chance to go in and kick it. It wasn't a very long kick, it was like a 28-yarder, but still, I think that kick to put our team and to help us, you know, start out like that was probably the best moment.
So when you go out there, are the players say anything to you at all, or just kind of quiet?
Yeah, they say, you better not miss this, or you can keep going that way. Usually was the case. Good relationship between the players and the kickers, which, by the way, thanks for putting me in the program as an athlete, because as a kicker, it feels really good.
But you know, really, you know, you got the Lou Groza Award, Best College Kicker in 1994. That's a huge award for a kicker.
Yeah, and credit for there goes to Rich Ellerson, and back to Dick Tomey. Rich Ellerson was our special teams coach. A lot of people, you talked about my best kick. You know, also within that is the worst kick, you know, to the point that you were making, Rich, was about sometimes it's the defeats that mean as much as the victories. In 1992 at Miami, I had a kick that could have knocked off the top-ranked team in the country and ended the Orange Bowl streak for like 55, 56 games. And that was one of my best kicks that didn't go through the uprights because it had so much adrenaline it would have went good from 60. But that kick, Dick Tomey could have given up on me. It was actually the week before I had a rough game against Oregon State, so they didn't. And that summer I went back to work and I just refined everything, and that sort of drove me to be better, which actually led to my next 2 years, which were my best years. So I asked Coach Tomey at the Lou Groza banquet in Miami, my senior year, I brought that up, and he said, well, you know, you either believe in a player or you don't. That's always been my philosophy, is what Coach Tomey said. And he said, I believe in you. And I think that if you believe in someone, you have to decide if you're going to stay with them or not. So, you know, I stayed with you. Now, had you had another couple of bad games, then maybe I would have, you know, we would have looked at it, but you bounced right back. And so that was a huge, huge thing. A lot of coaches would have just said, you know what, you know, that's that. So credit goes to them, and of course, you know, obviously a great holds, great snaps, the usual stuff. 3 people touch that ball in under a second and a half. No one really understands that. They just see the kicker gets the credit or the miss. But so great group around me. We're lucky for that.
So you were the 3rd round draft choice of the St. Louis Rams. That's, for a kicker, that doesn't happen anymore, does it?
Yeah, it's rare. I think they do like maybe 1 or 2 kickers a year get drafted.
So what were you thinking, the Rams, or in the 3rd round, or what?
No, I was thinking the Falcons. Frank Gans, at the time, Falcons came out a lot that year, and they were saying, we're going to take you in the 3rd round. We're going to take you in the 3rd round. And I was like, wow, okay, that's great. Well, so I'm out mowing the lawn. My dad's doing yard work out there. My mom's just kind of like falling asleep on the couch watching the draft. And all of a sudden she comes out. She says, hey, Steve. She goes, telephone call, Wendy from the Rams. I'm like, Wendy from the Rams? I get on the phone, and it was Rich Brooks. And Rich Brooks had just gotten the job from Oregon. And he said, hey, we're going to take you to the next selection. I was like, what are you talking about? They weren't even on my radar at all. And because they had Tony Zendejas at the time, who was a great kicker, and I thought they were fine, but there was a lot of movement that happens. And then saw on the screen, called my dad in and saw the screen, and I saw my name on there, and we were just like, what is happening right now? It was totally crazy. So yeah, it was a surprise.
As a kicker, when you're out there, the game's on line, the other team calls a timeout. Does that affect you at all, or you just kind of what are you thinking about?
I think it can. It just depends on your mindset. So if you can do 2 things. You can, you know, let it affect you in a negative way, or you can take the time and kind of refocus on your kick, where you need to be. And so it's just sort of the mind games, but it can help you in a lot of times too, if you know, give you more time to prepare. I think it affects each kicker differently. So I don't think there's any blanket, yeah, the ice in the kicker works, or yeah, it doesn't. It really depends on who you're dealing with, and you have to look at their history.
So you said in college the players say, you know, you miss whistle, keep going. What do the pro players say?
Oh, them too.
Same thing.
Them too. Yeah, yeah. Well, no, you know, in the NFL though, I mean, you know, it's more of a job. It's a business and things like that. So it's not so much like keep going. It's more like you probably won't be here tomorrow like if you miss. And what's crazy is that the kickers are getting so good now. Back in the 80s, that's why they're doing the extra point thing this last year. In the 80s, if you were kicking 85%, you were in the top 5. And now, if you're kicking 80-something%, you're maybe not even in the bottom 5. Like the guys are getting so good every year, and that goes for every position. By the way, it's just that you see it with kicking because it's a measurable type, you know, deal.
So you also played arena football. Like, what was that like?
Much tougher kicking in the arena league than it is outdoors. I'll say that forever. And I had friends in the NFL that are kicking outdoor. I've done both. You don't have the elements because every game is inside, but it's the goalposts outside are 18 feet 7, and indoors they're 9 feet. So it's less than half the width. The crossbar goes from 10 feet to 15 feet, so it's a tiny target. Like if you don't hit the ball perfect, it's just not going through. So you know, it's fun though because you're kicking on every down. There's no punts. Like every single fourth down, you're kicking. And the arena league's gone under a lot of changes. When I played in it in its previous sort of incarnation before its reincarnation to now, but I got in there. To Lewis's point, when you talk about the NFL and the politics and how it all works, it can get really, really crazy. And so when I had a chance for the Arena League, I went in there sort of half kind of interested, and then first game I was hooked. And I stayed there for 8 years, had chances to go back to the NFL, and basically said, no, I'm happy where I am. So finished my career in the Arena League.
You live in what, Georgia now?
In Atlanta, yeah. Finished in Atlanta, and then my wife and child, we've been there for 11 years now. Trying to get back out here, but out there right now.
Okay. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thank you.
coming.
Appreciate it.